My earliest memory of school dates back to 1992, the year before I started grade 1. We were dead set with my grandmother that I was going to go to a particular school because this school was viewed or deemed to be a very good school. It was an English medium school, and my grandmother believed that because they teach in English, it should therefore be a good school. My application was, however, unsuccessful. I did not get to the school, and I was very depressed. I was devastated for a 6-year-old to not have gotten into the school. I ended up at a local primary school, Enqaphayi Primary School, and it was a walking distance from my grandmother's house. And when I look back today, I'm grateful to have gone to Enqaphayi. Grateful because I had an opportunity to be taught in my mother tongue, isiXhosa, a language I can speak, read, and write exceptionally well today. When I also look back and I realize that home language instruction has somehow always been deemed to be inferior. And if your child is taught in English, therefore, that's the better way of educating. I did my 4th year research on home language instruction, and it was clear that if you teach a child in their mother tongue, at least in the foundation years of learning, they will do far better later on in their lives. By the end of grade 6, going into grade 7, my father, a businessman living in Paarl in the Western Cape, negotiates with my grandmother and asks her if we could join him in Paarl in order for us to access better education. He had to negotiate with my grandmother because who is going to raise 2 young girls if he wants to take them on? But because they have always been in a pursuit for good education, good quality education, my grandmother agreed that my father could take my sister and I in pursuit of a good education. So here's a scenario of learner migration. Here's a scenario of children who live in the Eastern Cape, born in the Eastern Cape with their grandmother and their mother, and have this maternal support, people raising them, but having to leave the province and migrate because clearly there isn't good education in the province. We leave for the beautiful wine town of Paarl in the Western Cape, and we attend a series of interviews to get into a Catholic primary school. We eventually get in and we're accepted. I'm only there for 1 year. And to prove my point of home language instruction, I passed top of my class in grade 7 in an English medium Catholic private school. I do pretty well, and by the end of that year, I am already very well acquainted with good schools in the region, in fact, the whole country. And at this point, I'm well aware of the typical location of good schools. I know where they are situated, and I know where they are not. I also know that great schools are often almost always white. I also know that good schools have a culture, a very strong culture of sports and sportsmanship. I also know that good schools are very expensive, almost exclusive and elitist. I applied to my preferred school, high school for grade 8. And I apply well on time, and I really look forward to my acceptance letter. I don't think I read further than, thank you for your application to La Rochelle Girls High. Your application is unfortunately unsuccessful. So I was devastated. It broke me. And I remember not understanding why. But with the help of my father, who felt I was crying over split milk, he thought there are better schools, let's apply to another one. And we did. Now, the school he wanted me to go to is Paarl Girls High. Now, Paarl Girls High in Paarl is affectionately known as Warwisi Squelperel. A name I did not resonate with in the first instance. So how am I going to be excited about going to the school? But I eventually get in. And I'm not thrilled, really, I'm not excited. This for me is just last resort, really. I really wanted the other school. I arrive at Paarl Girls High, and state-of-the-art buildings, teachers who are subject matter experts in their fields, and this is a bunch of passionate people. There is a myriad of sporting codes to choose from. I take up hockey, I play netball, even though it was all F team, but I was part of a team. And I auditioned to form part of the choir. I learned to swim because swimming was compulsory for all the girls in the school. But the values were not hanging on walls, we lived them. So the culture of excellence, the culture of sportsmanship, the culture of commitment, the culture of finishing what you started, these are things we understood very well as the girls in the school. At the end of grade 10, going to grade 11, we used to visit my grandmother and my mother in the Eastern Cape every December. And upon our return, this is the day before we opened school, and this is the year I was going to be going to grade 11. My father and I have a massive altercation, so massive that I'm sent back to Egluwa, to my grandmother, and day before schools open for grade 11. And so I go back to Butterworth, and I am hysterical. So I'm looking for a school in Butterworth, but my standards are high. I'm looking for a Paarl Girls High equivalent. And I search. January comes to an end. I can't find anything. I panic and I search for the school. February. Now, anything close to a Paarl Girls High is an odd 130 kilometers out of town. Eventually, it sinks in that maybe you're not going to find something like a Paarl Girls High. A childhood friend's mother comes to my rescue. So Mama Gatandokazi takes it upon herself to find me a school. And she eventually says, no, I'll have a word with the principal of one of the best schools in town. And so I start asking people around, so is this school a great school? People say, yeah, no, it's the most expensive in town. It's absolutely the greatest. I'm like, okay, I didn't know. I know my schools pretty well, so I didn't know about this one. And I get into school end of April that year. So the whole term finished whilst I was busy looking for a Paarl Girls High in Butterworth. And I eventually get to the school, and the buildings are debilitated. There is a handful of passionate teachers, and passionate and worried about the future of the children, not passionate in subject matter expertise really, or having a repertoire of teaching methodologies that they can use, not that passionate, but passion that we worry about you passionate. There is no visible culture of anything. There is no sports, absolutely nothing to do. So this breaks my heart. Breaks my heart because this is the best school in town. Now, if this is the best school in town, show me your mediocre school. Show me your bad school. Because if this is the best that this town has to offer, we have a problem. This experience shaped the trajectory of my life and the work that I do today. Having lived in both worlds, having experienced these two education systems that are so glaringly different, worries me today. Worries me because clearly we have become so comfortable in our bubbles of middle-class South Africans. We can take our kids to particular schools while millions of others are subjected to substandard education. It became clear to me during that experience that firstly, by virtue of being born poor, you are going to be relegated to a substandard education. But also secondly, that by virtue of where geographically you are born, you are going to suffer and go to substandard schools. This is millions of our children in this country. And the stark polarities should not be a norm, because it is not uncommon in South Africa to find a school that looks like that and one that is within a 5-kilometer radius with another one. So it's actually, I don't know how we continue to live like this and we make this okay. So this is not okay. And to give you a basic example, so if we take a group of children who started school in 2004, of that, 51% don't even make it. They don't even make it to grade 12. They don't even finish high school. And the question we should be asking is, what happens to them? Where do they go? That is a lot of children who just don't get to grade 12. And even in the 49% of those that actually get to grade 12, 12% fail. They don't pass, right? 23%, they pass, but not well enough to get into university. Only 14%. 14. So what is wrong with our basic education system? What happens to those 51%? Where are they? What are they doing? Where do they live? What do they eat? How do they make a living? Those are the questions we need to begin to ask ourselves. But also, it's clear that if we have such a massive and a chunk of young people who don't actually get through education, they must be unemployed. They must be sitting somewhere and they are unemployed. The unemployment rate, and these are the recent statistics, is quite high in our country, but I'm going to just look at the age group that is between 15 and 34. That's the young people in South Africa. We have 20 million of those people, right? And then almost 60% of that is either employed or still in school, still in basic education or some higher education training. But almost 40% is idling somewhere. It's unaccounted for. It's not in school, it's not in employment, it's not in training. That is a high percentage. And then we wonder why we have such high crime rates. And we wonder why we have such social ills. Because there is a group of people in millions that is idling. And we're going to cause a problem for ourselves. And it is in our interest to care and to do something about it. And yes, education may not be the only way to solve the problem, but we know, many of us know, I know, that it is the single most important weapon that we can move people from poverty. To end off, I just want to urge everybody, we are all involved in different sectors and different activities, but I think it is important that we begin to care and we begin to do things intentionally and to think at scale about the solutions that we can bring forward to make sure that education is not just accessible to the elite, to the wealthy, and to the middle class, but that the millions of South Africans that really, really deserve it and need it also access it, so that we have an educated population of people, an educated country. Maybe then we will lead better. Maybe then we will govern better. Maybe then we will vote better. Thank you.